lie detector results.
On the next one, today at 4 on CW23.
Now on Crime Watch Daily.
My husband's on the bed.
A woman comes home and finds her high school sweetheart with a bullet in his head.
And there's a lot of blood. He's not moving.
A decorated veteran mysteriously dead.
They believed that Brandon committed suicide initially.
Suicide or murder? Crime Watch Daily unravels a web of texts, lies, and videotape.
She said, everybody dies sometime.
Then, a New York high school teacher forced to sit in shame at a tiny desk inside the front office.
They're trying to drive me crazy by sitting there, like staring at a wall.
He says it's retaliation for blowing the whistle on secret school scandals. Now, we pin down the principal.
Why are you passing failing students? We have documentation that you changed grades.
The Crime Watch Daily exclusive America is talking about.
They wholeheartedly believe he was murdered.
The only interview with the widow of Fox Lake police officer Joe Glitowitz. What she told us before his death was ruled a suicide. And he was accused of stealing from his police program.
You love that program. Dedicated is a very mild word.
Then, one of the craziest court cases of all time. A Virginia teenager charged with assault. Her weapon, a baby carrot.
So wait, let me get this right. Deadly and delicious?
And in today's crime tube, an old lady with a lead foot. The crazy police chase. They're the stories you won't find anywhere else. We've got them every day. Crime Watch Daily starts right now.
Welcome to Crime Watch Daily, everyone. I'm Matt Doran. We start today with a cold-blooded murder mystery in Chile, Minnesota. A decorated veteran of the Air National Guard is found dead, alone in his home. At first, it appeared to be a suicide, but investigators would soon find out it was much more than that. Andrea Isom has our top story.
1:11 in the morning. A young woman in St. Paul, Minnesota makes a frantic call to 911.
What's the problem?
My husband's on the bed and there's a lot of blood. He's not moving.
How did your husband get bloody?
I don't know. I just got home.
Where's the blood coming from?
I think it's head. I don't want to look at it.
Just after midnight, Heather Horst returned home to find her husband, Brandon, shot through the head.
He's not awake. He's not breathing.
No.
We're hurrying. We're sending you some help.
Police find what appears to be a tragic case of suicide.
There was no evidence of a gun around, but they believed that it was underneath the body. And when the medical examiner arrived on scene, they rolled the body and found that there was no gun. At that point, they knew that they were dealing with something more. This was not a suicide.
What cops didn't know is that they would soon be unraveling one of the most twisted, cold-blooded murder plots in the city's history. The death of 25-year-old Brandon Horst, a decorated veteran of the Minnesota Air National Guard, was a devastating blow.
He was involved in the Air Force because he had a purpose, and he didn't believe in living life without making an impact on the world. He was a good man.
He's always had a smile, very likable, easygoing, so whether you knew him casually or you knew him well, you couldn't help but like Brandon Horst.
I would categorize Brandon as being a very thoughtful person, but he's also very giving. He seemed to care deeply about my sister.
High school sweethearts. Heather and Brandon were married for 3 years. According to close friend Bree Maduna, the relationship had its challenges.
They got married very quickly. She was already pregnant. We had a baby shower for her. I took her shopping for her baby registry.
Heather's brother Byron recalls the couple's excitement.
She's taking Facebook photos of her stomach, and everyone's happy for her.
And it was maybe a month later, after their marriage, that Heather apparently lost the baby, and he was devastated. He was really looking forward to being a father.
In a memorial to their lost child, Heather and Brandon released balloons at a local park.
Brandon had a very difficult time with the memorial and moving past that.
News of the baby's death raised troubling questions.
She was supposedly in her 7th month, so past the point that you would expect a miscarriage.
We started talking with my sister about it, and she started coming out saying, oh, the reason I lost the baby is because Brandon abused me. I think her story was he pushed her into the bathtub, and that killed the baby.
Heather shared stories of abuse with others as well, including this man, Steve Cotterick.
Heather would say that Brandon would hit her. At one point she had said that he had caused her to have a miscarriage. He would beat the dogs. The police wouldn't do anything about it because he was a soldier.
Cotterick lived in this building, in a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 others. One of those was Erin Allen, the fiancée of Brandon's stepsister, Angela.
The way Erin reacted to her saying she was being beat by her husband was he would get pissed off. He'd want to jump right there to go beat Brandon's ass right on the point.
But that picture of an abusive husband didn't jive with others who knew Brandon.
I have every reason to believe that Brandon was going to divorce Heather.
And that's when she cut her wrists, and he felt like he couldn't leave her. He felt guilty that he would be the cause of her harming herself or worse.
Even Heather's own brother had his doubts.
I personally couldn't imagine him being a violent person whatsoever.
According to County Prosecutor Karen Kugler, finding a motive for Brandon's murder was also perplexing.
They determined quickly that he had absolutely no enemies out at the air base.
My sister and her husband had a history of letting random people stay with them. They'd pay rent, I assume, but it always seemed to end badly. I was like, it's probably one of those morons that they let stay with them.
In the course of going through the house, they found that the house was an absolute utter mess. There was a brand new rifle sitting in a box, in an opened box in the dining room, wasn't touched. There were other items of value that were in the house that were not touched, so it was pretty evident that this was not a burglary type situation.
Heather wasn't home at the time of the murder. In fact, this security video from a local drugstore shows she was with Brandon's stepsister, Angela, more than 3 miles away. But detectives did find something intriguing in the couple's bedroom.
In the course of rolling the body, there was also a bullet casing that fell from the bed and rolled onto the mattress. They knew that that was clearly a significant piece of evidence.
In fact, that shell from a 9mm slug was about to put the grieving widow squarely in the crosshairs of justice. When we come back,
they're thinking it's my pistol.
Cops turn up the heat.
You're in a box here. There's no good way out of this except to tell the truth and talk about what happened.
And lies begin to unravel.
Being accused of killing my own husband? That's what you're getting at.
Returning now to our Crime Watch Daily murder mystery, the death of Minnesota Air National Guardsman Brandon Horst. Here's Andrea Eisen.
Matt, police have zeroed in on his wife as a possible suspect. The problem? She was miles away from the house on camera at the time of the murder. And now, a key piece of evidence found at the scene is about to put 2 people behind bars. Brandon Horst, a 25-year-old Air Force serviceman in the Minnesota Air National Guard, was found murdered in his own bed. The key piece of physical evidence, a 9mm bullet casing found on the mattress.
The autopsy revealed that the bullet entered from a very close distance through the right eye and coming out the left arm that he was resting on. The bullet then lodged in the bone and was able to be extracted so that we were able to use it for forensic purposes.
In the course of searching the house, St. Paul police found a pistol case for a 9mm Smith & Wesson registered to Brandon's wife, Heather. But the gun was missing. According to prosecutor Karen Kugler, that's when cops caught a big break.
Underneath the padding in a gun case, sometimes manufacturers will put test-fired casings, and they found a little packet with casings in it. It was a direct match. So they knew that the gun that had killed Brandon was the gun of Heather Horst. At that point, they didn't know who was holding the gun.
But Heather had an alibi. Here she is on security camera shopping at a drugstore with her sister-in-law, Angie. Early on the morning of Brandon's murder, both women were brought to the police station to help detectives find the killer.
They were put in different rooms and interviewed by 2 different homicide investigators.
I know that this is difficult. I know that this is hard.
So how long have you known Heather?
As the homicide investigators were getting the information from the 2 individuals, they took a break, met, and shared the information they received, and realized that 2 different stories were emerging.
And when any homicide detective smells a lie, they pounce.
You haven't realized yet that you're in a box here. There's no good way out of this except to tell the truth and talk about what happened.
Heather Horst said to the primary homicide investigator, "You can even look at the tape from Walgreens. You'll see I'm at Walgreens."
We know you went to Walgreens. That's fine. We know you were with Angie. That's fine.
Almost as if she had set up some alibi. She still wasn't even a suspect at that point.
Explain it to me.
Being accused of killing my own husband? That's what you're getting at.
Did you kill your husband?
No.
Was the stress just too much to take? Do you have someone else on the side that you're planning on leaving Brandon for?
Wow.
Heather and Angie were allowed to leave, escorted home in a squad car.
We had a video of that, and it was a very bizarre reaction in the squad car.
Have you ever been in the backseat of one of these? How does that make you feel? Trapped.
Heather was not real emotional, almost irritated that she was being taken downtown to be interviewed after her husband had just died.
I am grieving my husband, and they are accusing me of crap that I didn't do. I won't be questioned like that again. I didn't do it, that's enough's enough.
It was just really bizarre for somebody that had just, well, 2 people that had just witnessed a very traumatic situation.
Immediately, investigators began to take a closer look at that alibi tape from the drugstore.
And they're kind of looking around, they're just meandering about. It's almost like they're trying to kill time. So all of a sudden we see Heather get a text, Angela get a phone call, and the 2 of them go rushing out of the store at that point.
Not long after, Heather was back home making a frantic call to 911.
My husband's on the bed and there's a lot of blood. He's not moving.
So who texted Heather and caused her to rush home?
The text messages were all in the late hours of August 4th, just minutes before Brandon Horst was murdered.
Clearly, a web of deception was beginning to emerge. The only question, who was spinning it? Up next, a would-be killer comes clean.
Me personally, I favored using a knife.
And another makes a dramatic confession.
She said, everybody dies sometime.
Also coming up, Granny's got a scooter, and she's not afraid to use it.
There's no license plate. She's in a little cart.
A dash cam chase like you've never seen. That's coming up.
Now, for the conclusion of today's Crime Watch Daily murder mystery. Who killed Brandon Horst? Here to help answer that, Andrea Isom.
Matt, the decorated Air National Guardsman was found dead inside his home. Police say his wife received strange texts around the same time he was killed. The big question, who sent those texts? And what did they say? We are about to find out. 2 days after the murder of Brandon Horst, his wife Heather was emerging as a prime suspect. But were there others caught up in this Black Widow's web of deceit?
The text messages that were on the phone were between Heather Horst and Aaron Allen. And they were all in the late hours of August 4th, just minutes before Brandon Horst was murdered.
Aaron Allen, the fiance of Angie, Brandon's stepsister, and Heather's best friend. But when Allen was brought in for questioning, he claimed innocence.
What happened now? And you went up there to help your friend.
I'm sorry, but I help friends in other ways. I don't murder is not my MO.
So cops picked a softer target, Alan's fiancée, Angie.
They really started putting the pressure on Angie, and at first she tried to hold up the story and protect both Aaron and Heather, and then she broke.
Now we need to find out exactly what happened to Brandon.
According to Angie, the plot to kill Brandon began months earlier.
Heather had been manipulating Aaron Allen into believing that she was a victim of domestic abuse.
At 6'3", 365 pounds, Allen was a not-so-gentle giant.
Pure rage. When it comes to his anger, there's really two modes, and I describe that as on and off.
Heather was a frequent visitor to Angie and Aaron's apartment, which they shared with Steve Cutterick.
She started coming over saying that she would be getting beat by her husband. She came over one day with a lanyard tied around her neck.
Claimed that Brandon was trying to strangle her and that she was able to escape. She did a 15-minute ride across town with the ropes tied so hard around her neck that her face was red. It made no sense.
But it made sense to Aaron Allen, and that's all that mattered to Heather.
When Aaron heard these allegations, he would just get more and more mad and more amped to do it, if you would.
She offered insurance proceeds, claiming that Brandon had $1 million policy, and she would pay 10% to each person who helped her kill her husband and get rid of him.
On August 4th, 2013, Aaron Allen finally snapped.
Heather got to their house early in the morning and walked in saying, "That's it, I want him dead." She claimed that Brandon had murdered the baby that she was pregnant with, that he had beat her, and she had miscarried that night, and she couldn't take it anymore.
He seemed set on it. It was going to happen.
But he wasn't going to do it alone.
At that point, yes, I was intending on going through with it.
You heard right. Cutterick was scheming to help with the murder.
Me personally, I favor using a knife because there's thousands of copies of the same knife made. Aaron had always preferred, like, a gun.
These people are not geniuses.
Heather took the men shopping for black clothes to wear that night. While they were gearing up in the men's section at Kmart, Cutterick began to waver.
Heather had him pretty well wound up in her story. I told him, dude, this ain't right. And he just brushed me off like I just made some quick joke or something.
Instead of meeting Allen later that night as planned, Cutterick wisely snuck off to a party instead.
Wound up getting extremely drunk and high, and I don't remember when I got home or how I got home at that.
At that point, Aaron Allen and Heather Horst were the only two to commit this execution. And so they had to rearrange the plan and rethink what they were going to do.
That evening, Heather made Aaron hide in the basement.
She would give him her gun. He would sit and wait until Brandon got home from work. And as Brandon went to sleep, she would go down and notify Aaron that he should go up and do the deed.
All Heather needed was an alibi.
She was going to take off and go to Walgreens so that he would be the only one home. She would grab Aaron's girlfriend, Angie, to go with her. That was their plan. And that's exactly what they did.
But Aaron also began to waver.
While Aaron Allen was sitting in this urine-soaked basement, Heather came down and smoked a cigarette with him right before the murder of Brandon. Before she left the house, she told him that he needed to go through with this. Think of the babies. When he said he didn't think he could do it, she said, "Everybody dies sometime."
Just after midnight, Heather is seen receiving a text from Allen. It reads, simply, "Done."
The text messages directly pointed to Heather Horst and Aaron Allen being involved in the murder of Brandon Horst.
Angie's testimony against Heather and Aaron Allen sealed their fate.
Going to be under arrest for the murder of Brandon Horst.
In the end, Heather Horst's unending string of lies proved to be staggering.
Ultimately, after doing the investigation, we believe that Heather had never been abused by Brandon. She also claimed that she had been pregnant multiple times. In the course of the investigation, we could never, ever establish that she had, in fact, been pregnant.
And she looked pregnant. She just had a stomach, I guess.
I would never imagine my sister would have been able to do something like that. So that was the farthest thing from my mind, is my sibling being involved in it.
Brandon wanted out of the marriage, and he made it clear to her that he wanted out of the marriage. Heather knew that her life was crumbling very, very rapidly.
It took a jury just 2 hours to come to the same conclusion. Aaron Allen testified against Heather in court and pled guilty to second-degree murder, receiving the maximum sentence of 40 years. As for the Black Widow who spun this lethal web, Heather Horst was convicted of aiding and abetting a first-degree murder and can look forward to dying behind bars. Brandon's stepsister Angie is not charged with any crimes, claiming she didn't believe Heather was serious about killing Brandon.
It is absolutely tragic that the people that knew that this homicide was going to take place didn't step in and call the police.
I'm not the type of person that calls the police.
25-year-old Brandon Horst was laid to rest with full military honors, a promising life cut short by nothing more than cold-hearted greed.
I have to say that of all the deaths in my 15 years with the Wing that we've experienced, this affected us the most. It was nothing short of a betrayal by a family member who took someone in his youth and robbed us of someone whom we deeply cared about and who had made many contributions to our Wing, our state, and our nation.
You can really hear just how deeply those who loved him so much have been crushed by what happened here, and also how much he was just revered, how much the world has lost here. There's been a big development too, I understand, in this case, Andrea.
Huge development, Matt. Believe it or not, Heather is appealing her conviction and asking for a new trial. Just last month, her attorneys went before the Minnesota Supreme Court to argue that Heather's rights were violated when those medical records were used to reveal that she was, in fact, never pregnant.
Wow, that's just incredible. There's so much betrayal at the centre of what's happened in this case.
Right.
We will, of course, follow the court's decision and bring you any and all updates. Thanks so much, Andrea. Okay. Now let's take a look at what else is still to come on Crime Watch Daily.
A high school teacher in Queens in detention for blowing the whistle on his bosses? Now we confront the principal.
You knew about an inappropriate relationship between a vice principal and a student?
Plus,
Crime Watch Daily breaks down the universities with the most campus crimes.
that's coming up.